You know that feeling, right? That gap between what your customers say they want and what your team actually delivers? Customers will tell you they want good service or a reliable product, but what does that actually mean for your engineers, for your operations team? So today, we're going to dive into a really powerful framework that's designed to translate all that ambiguity into real, concrete action. Let's get into it. Here's our game plan. First, we'll talk about that customer expectation gap. Then, we'll introduce the critical to quality, or CTQ, framework. We'll break down the CTQ tree itself, see it in action with a really practical example, and then wrap up with its strategic impact and your key takeaways.
Okay, let's start with the core problem. Look, listening to your customers, getting that voice of the customer, is absolutely critical. But, and this is a big but, it's only half the battle. The really tricky part, where so many great ideas fall apart, is in the translation of that feedback into something your team can actually build. I mean, really think about this question. When a customer says they want fast shipping, are they thinking 2 days, 2 hours, 20 minutes? When they ask for an easy-to-use app, which specific clicks or features make it easy? If you don't have a system to define these things, your teams are basically just guessing, and that leads to a ton of wasted effort and, frankly, disappointed customers.
And that, right there, is the challenge in a nutshell. We have to find a way to get from the subjective world of customer feelings to the objective world of operational metrics. We need a blueprint, a map that connects a vague desire from a customer directly to a specific, quantifiable target that our teams can actually hit. And that is exactly what the CTQ framework is all about.
So, how do we build that bridge from what a customer wants to what we actually do? Well, the answer is the critical to quality framework. It's a systematic way to make sure that what you're delivering is precisely what the customer means when they say quality. It just brings so much clarity to the very beginning of any project.
You know, what I love about this definition are those two words, translate and quantified. The CTQ tree isn't just some fuzzy brainstorming exercise. No, it's a rigorous method for taking that voice of the customer and converting it into the language your business actually runs on, the language of numbers, of targets, and of clear specifications.
All right, so let's pop the hood and see how this thing is actually built. To really get the power of the CTQ tree, you have to understand its 3 basic levels. The best way to think about it is like a waterfall, right? It cascades down from a high-level idea all the way to concrete, measurable actions. Each level just flows logically from the one right before it.
It all starts at the very top with the need. This is the big picture. It's the main thing the customer is trying to accomplish. So, for example, the need might be something simple like order groceries online, or maybe get a reliable internet connection. It's the core value you're providing.
Okay, so once we have that big need, the next step is to break it down into what we call quality drivers. Now, these are the key characteristics that, from the customer's point of view, define a quality experience. So for online grocery ordering, the drivers might be things like speed, accuracy, or product quality. They're still kind of broad, but they start to add some much-needed structure. And this is where the magic really happens. For every single one of those drivers, we define specific, quantifiable requirements. This is where vague ideas become real, actionable targets. That driver of speed, that now becomes the requirement, order delivered in under 2 hours. The driver of accuracy, that becomes less than a 1% error rate on items. See? These are the metrics your team can actually build, measure, and improve. Okay, theory is one thing, but let's make this real. We're going to use a great example from our source material, a grocery store that wants to launch an online ordering service. Let's watch how they would use a CTQ tree to turn all that customer feedback into a solid operational plan. So check this out. This chart just lays it all out perfectly. The big need at the top? Online ordering. Simple enough. From there, the team identified 4 key drivers of quality: fast delivery, accurate orders, fresh produce, and an easy checkout. But notice, and this is the key, for each driver there's a non-negotiable, measurable requirement. Fast isn't a target. Under 2 hours is. Accurate is vague. Under 1% error rate is crystal clear. This tree is now a direct blueprint for the entire operations team. So what this shows us is that the CTQ tree is way more than just a project management tool. When you use it right, it has a massive strategic impact. It fundamentally aligns what you do inside your company with what your customers actually value outside the company. And that alignment, well, that's the engine for real, sustainable growth. It's a huge competitive advantage. So let's just quickly recap the big wins here. The CTQ tree turns that messy ambiguity into sharp clarity. It forces your team to laser focus on the metrics that actually matter to your customers.
It gives them clear goals, it ensures new products are designed for quality from day one, and it does all of this in a simple, visual map that anyone in the organization can understand.
So when is the perfect time to pull this tool out of your toolbox? It's incredibly valuable at the start of any new project, especially if you're using a Six Sigma approach, right there in the define phase. Use it anytime you're staring at ambiguous customer feedback, anytime you're designing a new product or service, or even when you're just trying to find a new way to get a leg up on your competition.
All right, we've covered a ton of ground. We've talked about the expectation gap, we've deconstructed the CTQ tree, and we've seen it in action. So now, let's bring it all home and make sure this really sticks. Time for a quick pop quiz. This is actually inspired by a green belt exam question. Take a look. Which one of these tools is specifically designed to translate those broad, general requirements into very specific ones? And the answer is, of course, C. Now here's why that's so important. A tool like a process flowchart maps out how you do the work. The CTQ tree defines what the work needs to achieve from the customer's point of view. It is, without a doubt, the go-to tool for turning the qualitative voice of the customer into the quantitative language that a business can actually act on. And that brings me to my final thought for you today. As you go back to your work, I want you to ask yourself this question. What is the single most critical, but still kind of vague, customer need that your business isn't measuring yet? Because applying the CTQ framework to that one question, well, that could be the key to your next big breakthrough.